Hi, welcome to my kitchen. My name is Sue, and today we're going to make a really simple dish. It's Keftedes. Those are Greek meatballs. They're a little different from other kinds of meatballs. They're very, very tasty. They're very, very easy, and you can actually make two variations, one in a tomato sauce and one just plain. Now for this recipe, and for all the recipes we use on this show, including videotapes of some of the recipes, please look us up on Tweeton.com. That's our website, Tweeton.com. As I just said, you'll find the recipes, you'll find an opportunity to order videos of the show, you'll find interesting links to other Greek sites that will give you some insight into the Greek culture. So, please remember to look us up at Tweeton.com. And I almost forgot, you can email me. And I want to say that I have received a few emails from the audience out there, and it was really wonderful corresponding with people who are watching this show, people who aren't Greek but are just interested in Greek cooking. And I even received a phone call. So please communicate with me. I'd enjoy hearing from you. But on to the meatballs, Keftedes. To make Keftedes, you need to start with 2 pounds of ground meat, lean ground beef or lean ground lamb. Actually, you could use a combination of any kind of meat, including lamb, beef, pork, even ground chicken or turkey. You need some tomato sauce. For binding, you need some dry breadcrumbs, either purchased or homemade. For flavoring, you need garlic, definitely, and you need 1 large onion. You need the juice of a half a lemon. Also for binding, you need an egg. And for flavoring, you need the trio of flavorings. You need some oregano, you need some mint, and you need some dill. Put this all together and you've got a wonderful, tasty meatball treat. The first step in making the Keftedes is to get the onion finely chopped. And it really does need to be finely chopped. This is one time where big chunks aren't going to do. And that's because if you don't cook the meatballs in sauce, then the onion only has one opportunity to be cooked, and that's in the initial browning of the meatball. And so it's got to be finely chopped so it can be cooked quickly. So this is the time to just take the time, the effort, the pains to get this as finely chopped as possible. And anything that didn't come out finely chopped, just go over it before you put it into the bowl. Alright, that's done. You can see these are pretty finely chopped. Just a nice small dice. Next comes the garlic, anywhere from 2 to 4 cloves. Boy, this is a big one. So this could almost count as 2 cloves all by itself. And this one's pretty big too. 1 more huge clove. That ought to be just perfect for my Keftedes. A nice whack to loosen the skin. And now all you need to do is just peel them and chop these finely too. And the reason for chopping the onion finely, the garlic finely, is because of the nature of a meatball. It's just not going to cook an awful long time, and you don't want to run into big chunks of raw garlic or raw onion. Okay, now it's just time to slice, chop, you know, you could even put the garlic through garlic press on any of these recipes. Putting garlic through garlic press is just fine. I'm just going to chop it up a little more. Just make sure it's very finely chopped. Okay, that's done, and that goes into the bowl too, along with the chopped onions. Now what you want to do is add breadcrumbs. A cup of dry breadcrumbs. Now these can be breadcrumbs that you purchase, or you can use the heels of bread, stick them out to dry, and then grind them up yourself in your food processor. Doesn't matter. They should be unflavored. Alright, so there's a cup of breadcrumbs. Just add that to the bowl with your onions. For moistness and flavoring, can of tomato sauce, 8-ounce can of tomato sauce. To bind, along with the breadcrumbs, 1 egg. And to add a little moisture and a little tang, and because it's a traditional Greek flavoring ingredient, the juice of half a lemon. Boy, this thing's full of seeds. I tried to remove the seeds before, as you saw, but I missed plenty. Just remove the seeds. Nobody needs to bite into a lemon seed. Alright, that's it. Now we're ready to move on to herbs. For this recipe, you will need 1 teaspoon each of dill weed, oregano, and mint. I completely ran out of dried oregano and dried mint, and I decided that I would just go out to my garden and pick the fresh. If you're going to use fresh herbs, you're going to need to double the amount. And the reason is simply because the flavor has a tendency to cook out with the fresh herbs. Dried herbs, the flavor is a little more intense. It's a little more concentrated. So 1 teaspoon each of dill, oregano, mint, if they're dried. And if you have the fresh, then use about 2 teaspoons or a little more. It certainly isn't going to hurt. In addition to the herbs, you could also add up to 1/4 cup of chopped parsley. And that also makes the meatballs very tasty, very moist and delicious. Now I'm just going to get started chopping up my herbs. I'm guessing here. So that looks like about 1 teaspoon. So I'll add a little bit more since this is fresh. This is my mint. I've got 2 pots, and I use spearmint. Okay, that looks fine. I'm just going to chop it up. And just keep chopping. And you do want this finely minced because it's not dried, so it can't be actually crumbled in your hands. So you want to make sure that it's finely minced so that, again, no one bites into a big chunk of mint or oregano. And that's pretty good, even if I say so myself. And so into the pot it goes, or into the bowl it goes with everything else. Now I want to show you a different variation for chopping herbs. Some people swear by this. Now this is a method that can be used for almost any herb, including parsley. All you do is you take the leaves off the herb, or whatever it is that you want to be chopped, put it into a narrow glass, narrow cup, or bowl, some sort of container. And then you use your kitchen shears instead of a knife. You use your kitchen shears and just start snipping. And as you get things more and more chopped, you just push them over to one side and just keep snipping. It's an alternative method. It does work. You could try it and see if you like that better than chopping things up on the chopping board. But you do need a pair of kitchen shears, not just regular scissors from your sewing table or something like that. And this would work if you have a lot of herbs to chop up. Okay, so this mint is fairly chopped fine too. And what the heck, I'm going to add at least half of it to my bowl because I don't think you can overdo fresh herbs at all. Alright, now we're on to our next herb. Next comes oregano. I have 2 kinds in my hands. This, with the little buds, is Italian oregano. This, on this side, with the broader leaves, is Greek oregano. And I have several plants of Greek oregano growing. This particular plant is very sharp, very strong flavored. I have a couple plants where the leaves aren't very overpowering. So that's why I want to use both kinds. I'm going to use a little bit of Italian and a little bit of Greek. Again, 1 teaspoon of oregano if it's dried, and 2 teaspoons or a little more if it's fresh. So it's just a matter of me chopping these now. And I'm just, on the Italian oregano, I'm just pulling off the little flowers and the leaves. Later this afternoon, I might get out there and pull off or cut off a large amount and start drying it. I have a lot of plants growing, so obviously I can't use up the fresh herb quickly enough, fast enough. But what I really like is the ability to dry my own herbs. And there's nothing that beats your own dried herbs because they're fresh. You never know how long the stuff you buy in the store has been sitting on that shelf. But you have a good idea when it's your own. And the herbs are so easy. There's hardly anything to growing them. All you do is have to get them into a pot and just water them during our hot Sacramento summers. That's it. Then you give them a haircut every once in a while. And you can use them fresh, of course, but you can also dry them, and that's so neat. That's so much fun. All right, I think I've done a pretty good job of chopping up this Italian oregano. I'm going to put half of it in here in the bowl and half in with that mint that I chopped in the cup. This is my Greek oregano, and all I'm going to do is just remove the leaves and start chopping it up. A little bit of stems aren't going to hurt anything. Just be sure you get them finely chopped. And half into the bowl and half into the reserved herbs. That's it for fresh herbs. To everything that's in this bowl, I want to add the one dried herb that I'm using, and that's dillweed. I don't have any fresh dill yet, so I'm going to use 1 teaspoon of dried dillweed. Now remember, on all these herbs, a little bit more will not hurt a thing. It'll just make your meatballs even more flavorful. And to round this off, you're going to need a teaspoon each of salt and pepper. Of course, when you're grinding the pepper, you're just kind of estimating when you get to the point of being close to a half teaspoon or teaspoon. I guess what you do is you keep grinding until your hand gets tired. And I suppose you could use already ground pepper too. Okay, I give up. I'm done with the pepper. Okay, we're almost there. We've got everything we need for our meatballs. Onions, garlic, tomato sauce, breadcrumbs, an egg for binding, salt, pepper, delicious herbs. The only thing we're missing is the meat. What I'm doing right now is I'm just mixing up all the flavorings together. This way I can drop the meat on top and mix in the meat, but I'll know that the flavorings, the salt, the pepper, all the herbs have been evenly distributed throughout the whole mixture, and we won't be running into big pockets of no flavoring or pockets of, say, over flavoring. Just a little step before adding the meat. Now this can be done with a spoon. The meat part, I really think you got to get in there, dig in there, and use your hands. I'm using 2 pounds of meat. This happens to be very, very lean ground beef. However, you could use any combination of ground meat that you like. I would recommend, though, that at least 1 pound be either beef or lamb. All right, now it's incorporate the beef into all this flavoring. if you're going to cook, and if you're going to do a good job cooking, you really do have to learn how to get your hands in there. Not only with doughs, like cookie doughs or things like that, but with meat and with chicken and fish. So just get in there, because remember, you can always wash your hands later. Or not always wash your hands. You always should wash your hands later. And then you get rid of all the possible contamination. There, this is perfectly mixed. It's perfect. You can see bits of onion, flecks of the green herbs. It looks good enough to eat. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to fry them up and get ready to eat them. But first I am going to wash my hands. You should be able to make 16 Keftedes or meatballs out of these 2 pounds of meat. What I did here is I just spread out the mixture, and then I divided it in half 4 times, and I came up with 16 sort of equal pieces. And that's what I'm going to use as my gauge. Now, Keftedes are always traditionally rolled in flour before they are fried. I don't have a really large stovetop skillet. So I'm using my electric skillet, and today I'm also using a combination of olive oil and just regular cooking oil. The first thing, of course, is to turn the skillet on and get it hot. While the pan is heating, I'm going to spoon out some flour onto a paper plate for dredging the meatballs. I can feel the heat. So this pan is hot. It's a well-used pan. I use it quite often. I'm going to put in a little bit of olive oil for flavor. And just a little bit of regular cooking oil just to cover the surface. Let that heat up, and I'm going to start shaping my meatballs. Now for Keftedes, you want a flattened meatball shape, not a perfectly round shape. And the reason is that Keftedes are often served just plain, and so you need to have it flattened a little bit, like this, kind of like a fat hamburger. You need to have them flattened so that they cook well. Now just put them in the flour, like so. Shake off excess flour, and into the hot oil they go. Now remember, with the Keftedes, you want to round them up a bit, round the edges, but you really don't want them to be a ball, like a traditional meatball. You want flattened cooking surface, because Keftedes are often served just plain, right after the frying. So they need to be completely cooked when they're done with the frying step. And that's perfect. Now let's go to the meatballs that are frying in the pan. You can hear them, they're sizzling. And it's time to turn them over. I'm just going to use 2 forks. And this is what they should look like. They should be very, very well browned. It looks as though this batch is almost done, and I'm going to start removing the Keftedes that I know are done. The first indication is checking the underside, make sure that it's well browned. That's going to let you know you've got a good Kefte. Another thing that you can do is just check it with a little probe, and if you put the probe in, the meat should be rather firm. If it's squishy, too squishy, and that means it hasn't been cooked enough. But some of these are ready to remove, so that's what I'm going to start doing right now. Keftedes are a very versatile food. Hot, they may be served with tzatziki, that wonderful Greek yogurt, cucumber, garlic, and dill sauce, or they can be served with just plain yogurt, which is one way that I really like them. Another thing that's nice about keftedes is they can be chilled and they can be served cold. They're a wonderful picnic food. They're a wonderful hot summer day food. And again, serve them with tzatziki or serve them with plain yogurt. But another variation is to take the meatballs, set them aside, and make a delicious tomato sauce with a little bit of those flavorings, those herbs, dill, oregano, and mint. And then you cook the meatballs in the tomato sauce. And then with the meatballs in the tomato sauce, that can be served with rice, with noodles, with cracked wheat, even fried potatoes.